The first African-American high school in Anderson was located on West Reed Street next to St. Paul's Baptist Church. We'll look at the history of this school this week under the kudzu. Located next to St. Paul's Baptist Church, the first African-American church in Anderson, sits the now abandoned Perry School. Nearly a century ago, this was the location of the first African-American high school in Anderson. Education of African Americans in Anderson had been occurring since the 1890s, beginning with the Greeley Institute located on McDuffie Street. By 1900, the institute had 5 teachers and 583 students. Teachers were paid an annual salary of $108. The school was named for famed abolitionist Horace Greeley. With the growing number of students, a larger school for older students was needed. In 1901, at a cost of $3,000, a 2-story brick school was constructed on the corner of South Tower and West Reed Streets. The school was listed in the first Anderson City Directory, published in 1905, as Grammar School No. 1, with Mr. M. H. Gassaway principal. 9 teachers were employed at a salary of $113 annually. Around 1920, the old school was torn down and a new one built in its place. The new schoolhouse was one of the famous Rosenwald schools. From 1914 to 1932, the Julius Rosenwald Fund assisted in the building of 4,977 rural brick schools for African Americans in the South. In South Carolina, 481 schools were constructed. Nearly 24 Rosenwald schools were in Anderson County. Eventually, the school became known as the Reed Street School. In September 1951, the high school at Reed Street was closed and a new school was opened for the African American students in Anderson. Located at the intersection of Southwood and Franklin, this school was known as Westside High School. By 1955, the Reed Street Junior High 9th grade class was moved to Westside. In 1957, the 7th and 8th grades were moved. Reed Street was torn down and the present school was built. The new school was called Perry, and it educated thousands of African American students until it was closed in the 1980s. The property is now owned by St. Paul's Baptist Church, and plans exist for it to be revitalized. In 2004, a stone marker was placed at the school to commemorate its history and legacy to Anderson. The now quiet intersection of West Reed and Tower Street was once the center of African American culture in Anderson. Through the revitalization plans planned by St. Paul's Baptist Church, we hope that will continue. I'm Brian Scott with more history coming up next week right here under the kudzu.